Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for April 22nd, 2022. I'm Benji Fisher, moderating, and also present at the meeting are Ben Mullins, who's sharing the screen and will start off the discussion, Aaron McHale, Andre Pedrosa, Antonia, Afar Shal, Ralph Kohler, and Thomas Howell. So a larger group than we had last week, that's good. And as we often have, a good mix of designers, front-end and back-end developers, site builders. So a good diversity of opinion for evaluating usability issues. Go ahead, Ben.
Okay, so this is issue 3245967, and it is titled Messages Upon Switching to CK Editor 5 Are Overwhelming. So this is specific to CK Editor 5 and a very specific part of the process of switching from an editor that does, or a text format that does not use CK Editor 5 to CK Editor 5. So some of the context is probably wholly unfamiliar. And so I also created a document that I'm going to share in Slack. I didn't want to put it in the issue and have a Google Doc that was freely available. I'm going to put that in the thread for this. So the specific, to get a little more specific, so what happens is that if you're on a text format that doesn't use CK Editor 5 and you switch to CK Editor 5, there are many automated steps that detect the configuration of your text format and enable specific CK Editor 5 plugins, so there's no data loss and no functionality loss. These switches are accompanied by a series of messages that we hope are as transparent as possible regarding what happened underneath the hood. And I think that Tim, who filed this issue, reasonably had concerns about the specific language we use to report that information, because I think there is an opportunity to make the content of these messages a little more readable and a little less intense. So the issue itself has just one example of when you switch from one format to another, it will say the plugins that were supported to support a given set of tags that were supported in the earlier text format. And then similarly, there's several other scenarios accounted for here, which I've summarized in this document because I feel like this will be a little easier. So it might be a minute or two more of setup, and then hopefully, and then just ask me clarifying questions if anything is not clear about it, because I realize this is, it's CK Editor 5, it's brand new. So in this scenario, if we were switching to CK Editor 5, in fact, here, I'll show you here before I go into the document. This is a CK Editor 4 text format. It's going to take a moment. And most of these messages are specific to the configuration here, allowed HTML tags. So we don't want to allow tags or attributes that weren't previously allowed, but more importantly, we don't want to disallow anything that was allowed in the text format previously. So if we switch to CK Editor 5, it's figuring out how to properly convert it to CK Editor 5. And then in this case, we get these messages. So it noticed that headings were supported, for example. So the headings plugin was enabled. It also noticed that site and then definition list tags were supported in the text format, and there's no actual plugin that supports them. So what CK Editor does is it enables the source editing plugin and adds anything that's not supported by a plugin to manual editable HTML tags. And then in addition, even if there are tags supported by CK Editor 5 plugin, there might be attributes in the text format that aren't supported by a plugin. So in those cases, we have to add that. So for example, we have headings supported already, but the prior text format supported the ID attribute on those headings, which makes it necessary to add them here. So by virtue of me even describing this whole scenario, I think it's implicit that there's quite a bit happening as a result of switching your text format from one editor to another. And that requires us to try to report that information as well as possible. So these are the specific scenarios where you might see a message. This is the most peculiar one, in my opinion, but if paragraph or break tags are not allowed in the original format, those are automatically allowed because CKEditor 5 simply won't work without them. And so we have a message that just says following tags were added to limit allowed HTML tag. You can read through it, and then it will list P, BR, or a combination of the two. So that's alerting the user that one or both of those tags were automatically allowed. If a CKEditor 5 plugin is enabled in order to support a tag, it simply says the following plugins were enabled to support tags that are allowed by this text format. And then these are the plugins. So that is equivalent to, headings. And then it says what tags that's specific to. If there are tags supported from the original format that are not supported by available CKEditor 5 plugins, it's this message, and that corresponds to this one where there were tags that were permitted by the prior format that we needed to explicitly add to source editing. Then if CKEditor 5 plugins are enabled to specifically support attributes, not tags, because that's already covered in one of the earlier messages, we say that the following plugins were enabled to support specific attributes. And in that case, I believe that's the one that, that's the one that isn't covered here. Because that scenario is specific to if you need to enable attributes via a plugin that is available and you don't have to add anything to source editing, that's this message. And then this final message means that the switch process identified attributes that needed to be added to tags that are already supported, and it required updating this manually editable HTML tags field in order to support those attributes. So even by going through all that verbally, I feel like that's a lot of information all at once. So clarification questions are perhaps appropriate if you have any, but otherwise I'd love to just get people's thoughts on the wording, and perhaps even I think there's benefits for having these suggestions come from someone who has not been immersed in CKEditor 5 for months. So at this point, I'd love to just hear people's suggestions or questions.
I tried it early on, I think when CKEditor 5 was about to get in there. And I remember listening to you now with this great explanation. I was like overwhelmed with the message that happened there.
Yeah.
And I guess one of my question would be, and maybe we can preface that, like, how bad can it be if I ignore that message and say, yeah, okay, kind of, I know because it's in core, I trust it. And I don't really know what just happened there. I'm just like, sure, fine, go for it. Like, are there any bad things can happen with that, security wise or anything else?
There is, this is very edge casey, but there is a possibility that, especially as contrib plugins become available, that because this process automatically it will automatically detect what a prior text format requires. And if it finds a plugin that provides that functionality, it will enable it. There is the possibility that plugin will also allow tags that weren't previously allowed. So there is the potential for it to become more permissive as a result of that migration process. Based on just core and what we have, there's no risk currently, but especially as contrib adds things that can introduce risk, and it's a theoretical risk that we were concerned about.
Yeah, in general, my feedback would be the way I like to read things on the internet is get the conclusion first, kind of, relax, everything's good. And if you want details, here it is, but kind of also because before, what I remember, I couldn't summarize what's happening there. I just knew, oh, there's so many details of what's happening here. And I wish, like, it's kind of good to know, nothing gonna happen if you didn't know. If there could be something that summarize it first and say, this is a good thing and normal, it happened every time someone update to CK Editor 5, and here's the technical detail of what really happened.
Got it. And then, so when you say here's the technical details, do you have any thoughts regarding how, would it just be a matter of how it was ordered, or would some things be just moved to logs? Did you have any thoughts on how that would look?
Well, I wrote in the chat also, if we could, no, it's okay. We just have some communication here and there. If we could make like a Vimeo, YouTube video somewhere that people can click, and for me, for sure, it's going to help. Something like that. If it's getting technical, I would rather watching it on a video, even if it's someone just like what you did now was great. Like maybe in addition. And if there was a possibility kind of to, I think, which is the document is doing it, like categorizing what are the different things that are happening. Like this is a must, so here it is. But I'm talking about like very short titles that explain what happened in each part before diving to all the details. And I think it is good in the message there, and not just to hide it in the log.
Okay, great. So yeah, put the crucial information at the top, and then you could put the too long didn't read at the top, and then have it followed by things that are more likely to be skipped. Sounds like your suggestion then.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'd like to jump in for a minute. So first of all, let's clarify the audience here. These are messages that show up just once when the site builder is enabling CK Editor 5 for a particular text format, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then I also try to keep an eye on the chat, and some people are more comfortable writing rather than talking. And Antonia thanks you for the initial explanation of the problem. Ralph put in a rather long comment into the chat. Ralph, would you like to say that yourself?
I could. Just one detail about the notification channel, aside the wording. At the moment, it's just a long single block, mainly only structured by paragraphs. So a new line after each point. But would it make sense to provide some sort of introductory statement, something like the following steps are applied to the text format for the migration, or however you want to put it, and then provide those steps in a numbered list or something, so that it's more apparent to the site builder that these are individual steps applied to the text format.
That would contextualize it. Okay. Yep. That's a good suggestion. I'm documenting that.
So maybe you could, at this point, could you switch to your other tab so we can look at the messages in the context of the Drupal site?
Yes.
And we don't need to see your browser tools.
Let's see. Pardon me. There we go.
And someone, I'm sorry, Thomas, did I cut you off?
Well, not really. You were first, so not a big issue. Or not an issue at all. the number one thing that I'm concerned about, and I'm not sure this is the right venue, is that it seems to be very much the process is an opt-out type process, meaning that we explain in text in this message here what's going to be happening with tags. And you mentioned that there's a rare edge case where other tags may be enabled that are not intended. But because it's not asking someone to explicitly okay what's being enabled, they don't have a non-technical person may struggle to understand what's happening to their site. And so it's just process-wise, it's great to have this information. And I think it's cool here. And I would definitely recommend dropping this to the logs as well, so that it's easily findable or searchable if someone's looking through the logs. But I'm just concerned that for the average site builder, which to me in many instances is someone who's not technical, they're not going to know what they've just said okay to. It's going to be like one of those legal forms that they say, read through all this, sign and say okay, and move on, and nobody ever reads. I strongly suspect anyone building a blog, anyone doing a lot of these things, they're just going to say, hey, I want this tag, or I want to use this neat new feature without realizing the consequence. And I don't know how the message addresses that kind of, I view it as a usability thing because it's a user doesn't know what they're doing. And we're just assuming that they understand the text as it comes.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. And then that also brings to mind that it is quite easily based on some of the classes that we have in CK Editor 5, that if in instances where a plugin was enabled that provided more than what was allowed in the prior text format configuration, we would be able to know that, and that could be presented as a warning versus a status update, for example. So that scenario could be caught and covered, and based on what you're saying, it might even be desirable to have a validation step there that truly lets them know. In most cases, it really is just a one-to-one migration, and so the settings are in different places, but the functionality is the same. But anyways, yes, I think providing it as more of an option is a good idea for scenarios where something truly may have changed.
And the messaging that you just had there is really helpful.
Mhm.
A lot of what we talk about in terms of tags and all these things, they're technical things. At the beginning of the message, we could say, in most instances, there could be an explanation or something really short. And I'm really bad at the wordsmithing, but it would, in essence, state, this isn't really an issue. This message is here for edge cases. This should be a one-to-one switch with previous versions of CK Editor.
Yep.
That way, people who don't understand everything that's underneath it would have a plain English, this is the explanation, but here's some more information, and you might want to read about this elsewhere if you don't understand anything that's happening.
Right. Okay, fantastic.
So to me, it looks as though the text is kind of long, and people tend to skip text that's too long.
Yeah.
And let's focus on the basic usability ideas of one, keeping it short, two, making it actionable. So, for example, just looking at the first line, you mentioned both the plugin that was enabled and the tags that it handles. Are both of those things that I need to know in order to make adjustments if needed?
It's really for just transparency purposes, because for like okay, let's say in this example, code was supported by the prior text format, but it wasn't actually, it was via the code block plugin. So technically we've enabled a different plugin, but it supports the exact same tag. And then similarly, headings in Cicada for headings were provided by what is like the formatted text dropdown. It wasn't something that was specific to headings. So we're making the user aware that headings, which is essentially provides the same functionality, but it's not one-to-one. In like, for example, in the Cicada 4 equivalent, block quote was supported in the same dropdown. So headings is now its own thing. And it's not, so like a message like this may very well be inconsequential, and but we are erring on the side of providing as much information as possible. And I'm not going to assume that that's the best path. An abbreviated version that highlights the things of use may very well be a better choice. So there isn't really anything like actionable there. It's just trying to present what happened behind the scenes as transparently as possible. And there may be UX trade-offs for that. And so I'm absolutely interested in hearing how necessary people feel such information is.
Yeah, and just looking at what I can see of your screen at the moment, I see the headings plugin near the bottom of the screen. I don't see the code plugin.
Let's see. So the code isn't configurable. So you'll get these tabs for plugins that are configurable. Otherwise, it's let's see. Yeah, it's just available here.
Actually, it's to the left of that,
I'm sorry.
isn't it?
Wait. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah, I saw the 2 carrots and just went towards it. Yep. So that's it. So that's a distinction. Is non-configurable plugins you won't see listed here. It's just going to be in the toolbar.
Yeah, so I wonder how actionable that is, and if it's not actionable, maybe we don't need it. The other thing is, do we need to know both what happened and why it happened? So going to the next line of your message, the following tags were permitted by this filter's configuration, but no plugins support them. To ensure the tags remain supported by the text format, the following were added to the source editor's plugins. That's a lot of information. Maybe I don't really care about why, I just need to know what. So it seems to me the what is the following were added to the source editing plugins tags, or the following tags were added to, and then manually editable HTML tags. The source editing plugin.
Yeah. So yeah, specifically the setting here is where it happens. And even as this is being kind of summarized aloud, the confusing nature of it is becoming increasingly apparent. I will share, I guess, at least the thought process behind making this information available, and that might help guide us towards a solution. So in this case, in Cicada 5 is unique as opposed to any other editor used in a text format, because these allowed HTML tags, this is a read-only field. These are now completely determined by the plugins that are enabled and their configuration. And so in another text format, something such as these tags, were simply made available by going to allowed HTML tags. And they're now made available here by saying that they're among those tags that are manually editable. So because it's in a different place, that was one of the reasons that we thought it might be beneficial to let people know that, yes, the functionality still exists, but it's configuring it now happens in a new location. And that too, that's not the most intuitive thing in the world. So I suspect there are better ways of explaining it, or it might even be something that someone can suss out if it becomes necessary.
Yeah, so I think what I would want to see for that line is the tags and the name of the plugin. And then I can scan down the page and see source editing as the plugin down there. And when I find that, I'll sort of automatically get the heading manually editable HTML tags. I don't need manually editable HTML tags in the status message.
All right.
Though, Benji, my concern is, as a site builder, why would you think to click on source editing?
Because source editing is in the shortened status message, and being shorter, it stands out better.
I guess that for me, the concern about having any of this information here other than what's being added is the assumption that someone would know where to look. I feel like CK Editor should come with a strong warning to read the manual and to make it very both simply explicit and solid visualization. Meaning, I don't know how in context in that message you could do anything to make the source editing pop more. But source editing is not a term I am familiar with in terms of I've not seen it a bazillion times. And I wouldn't necessarily look below the fold myself. And so depending on the UI, knowing that you have to click down there, it just feels like this is really, it's even in its shortened form, what matters is we're telling people we've added tags that they can remove or they're editable. And that for support on how to know what just happened, please read the manual here or read the full message in the logs. I think it meets your needs, Benji, but even shortening the sentence doesn't work for me. Just because like it's language that's very specific to this module, unless it's something that's been around in Drupal 9 for a while, which is possible because I don't use Drupal 9 much.
So what if we put a heading on this status message, say CK Editor 5 plugin settings, and that matches the heading that appears further down the page. And then that second line includes source editing plugin. So that helps me match up. That helps me build my mental map between this status message and the plugin settings that I might want to edit.
I like that.
Yeah, that's clever.
Ben, is there anything in the status message that doesn't relate to the plugin settings?
Let's see. The one thing that isn't directly related to plugin settings is this first one, which is making the user aware that one or two tags may have been automatically added to the allow list in order to support CK Editor.
And I think that should not be an info message. I think that should be a warning message because it has security implications if you're adding tags that were not allowed originally. I mean, that's a real edge case, right? Because people normally allow paragraphs and line breaks. So it's not going to come up very often, but if it does come up, then probably there was a reason for it. So adding tags seems to me like a warning rather than an info message.
But I think the way I notice Drupal does things and rolling new things like CKEditor 5, trying to really accommodate so much. My question is 99% of the users, if not more, are they going to be negatively affected by wanting to switch from CKEditor to CKEditor 5, or are we expecting most of them to have a very smooth experience? Whether they read this message or not, it's all going to be good. It's like, I don't think their experience with CKEditor would be degraded in any way. So we also want to make sure that since CKEditor, the regular one, is going to go end of life very soon, we want to make sure they don't have concerns. I think that's what I'm trying to think about. Like, I wish that most of them could just, yeah, sure, CKEditor 5. I wouldn't even notice, beside the graphics is probably a little better and things like that. My site continues to be managed the same way it was. If you put a warning message, now, anxiety levels and everything, like, I really need to look into, but would it affect my site in any way?
Right. And that's actually, in fact, currently on head, in full transparency, this is not the current message. This is something that's RTBC and seems so inevitable that it's going to, that's what I decided to present. We were initially concerned about those tags being automatically added. And then during Drupal Dev Days, the step that we had was, we found was frustrating a lot of people, where it was forcing them to explicitly add those tags instead of it happening automatically, and alerting them CKEditor 5 will not work without them. And it was actually getting in the way of people evaluating, and the messaging was being misinterpreted. And so it especially after bouncing the scenario off of a security team member saying that BR and paragraph are effectively harmless elements to add, that we opted to go that route, and open to the possibility that concerns might be raised later. But
so I think in this vanilla case, it doesn't sound very stressful or security. It doesn't sound like something that really triggers my security fears. But my concern is, once it has the functionality to automatically add tags, what happens if someone else leverages a community plugin that adds something malicious without knowing it, and they never get warned? Because you've put in the functionality to do this, and it's not how it is going to be used out of the box. It's how someone else could use it as a vector of attack because it's automated. And I'm not saying don't do it, but if we don't have some warning message, there is a significant concern that someone might never even notice that those additional tags or tag, whatever it is, had been added. And they're like, what? That's weird. If it's not highly visible, I just have concerns, because automation is generally where malicious actors like to do their fancy stuff.
So the manner in which these are added, I would argue is more secure than the manner that they're currently added in CKEditor 4, which is client side, and this is all server side. So it's when the text format changes, if it notices that the tags required to not work, it's on the PHP end, it's a plugin configuration, and it is specific to these two tags. It's not a it's not an API that, you couldn't just throw a form alter in there and even change it. In Ccatter 4, there is JavaScript that looks, it's completely client side, where if you add a button to the toolbar, it will look at supported tags, and then that will add it to the allow list. And that, in my opinion, is significantly more vulnerable, because you can simply just add more. Additional JavaScript could be added that hooks into the same events and does it even without a message. And in this case, it's someone would have to go to great. I'm not even sure it's possible to override this process, but if it did, it would require a reflection and a whole bunch of other things. And
I'm not talking about overriding. So does this only add, is the code only going to add HTML tags that are for this use case, so that there'll never be any other missing tags? Or is it something where some new CK editor plugin is made available that you can add, and you want to add that in, and its repository is like, I don't know, in some way, shape, or form out of date, et cetera, et cetera. I just, if that's not possible, then it's not a concern. I get worried when I see automatic, and I don't know if it's available via an API, that someone could build a Drupal module that said, hey, this is going to add the Fire font to your site, and it's going to enable the Fire, and it's going to enable the Fire tag. But when it adds the Fire tag, it also adds in a second tag that you don't expect to be there, and it never warns you. That's what I'm looking to.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is an internal process. It's not part of config that any other plugin or anything can provide. And it's not even plugin specific. It's specific to this. It happens only within the switch from something that isn't Ccatter 5 to Ccatter 5. And the tags are effectively hard coded. So,
right.
But good concern.
Okay. I'm retracting my concern.
Very cool.
Just question on similar, if you then like remove those tags or that plugin, what does everything just continue to work, or do you get like a warning? Or
so I guess so everything continues to work as far as the text format goes, but what could potentially happen is if you had content that supported it, and this is not unique to Ccatter 5, but if you had content that included one of those tags, then it would no longer render with that. So I mean, for example, headings here, we have headings 2 through 6. So if we got rid of heading 5, saved it, existing uses of heading 5 would not, would no longer, they'd be filtered out.
okay. I'm just thinking because like you said that Ccatter requires the paragraph and break tags to function. So presumably you can't then go in and remove those.
So those two, no.
Okay.
And that has to do with internal functionality. So it's those tags may never appear in the content, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think like I'm thinking about back to the messaging, and so that going back to something I can't remember who raised it earlier, but just about the middle message about tags being added to the source editing, the manual section in there. So first of all, to clarify, were those tags that would be added there, were they all previously available tags that were added under the allowed HTML tags?
Yes, they were all previously available. And the one piece of nuance is that in some cases, these might be tags that were enableable via a plugin, but they had attributes that were not enableable via plugins, such as the IDs here. And that's why they're added here.
Okay, I think part of me feels like the precedent is if you consider this as basically just a change to the admin user interface, because effectively it's you go to a different text box edit. So we make changes all the time to the admin interface. We've never had a pattern of providing like a warning or a message on the page to be like, hey, this is moved or this is changed. Now you go here to do this. Rightly or wrongly, we just kind of make the assumption that people will realize, oh, this setting is on a different page or a different part of the form, and you can go here to find it. So part of me feels like there's a precedent of we actually don't need to tell people that something in the UI that something has moved or changed, because effectively, like that's all we're doing is we're saying you used to go here to edit this, now you go here. So I'm wondering if, based on that existing precedent, again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, whether we necessarily need to present a message in this case telling them this, you go to a different place to edit this.
All right. Yeah, no, that's a good point.
I mean, I think maybe it's helpful to do it. I just wonder if it's necessary given it's not an existing precedent.
And that could give us some flexibility. And we were, I guess, trying to make this a little friendlier, but if the friendliness winds up being so verbose that its usefulness is diluted, then that's, an argument against, I suppose. But yeah, so no, but that gives us some flexibility. You bringing that up.
So I guess just as a follow-up to my suggestion to separate the what from the why, perhaps the why could be on the module's help pages and add a link to the status message.
Oh yeah.
So any further comments on this? Ben, is there anything more you'd like to get from the people at this meeting?
No, this has been very, very useful. So that's great. I appreciate it.
Thank you for bringing it up. We have about 15 minutes left. That's not a lot of time. Clayton, do you think that's enough time to talk about your issue?
Yeah, I think so. So I guess I can track down the issue link.
And if you can share your screen and remember to read the issue into the recording.
Sure. Let's see here.
And I think I added links to things that were discussed in Slack to the issue for today's meeting, which it's the add permissions to the update module to hide warnings that you were thinking of, wasn't it?
It is, yeah.
Okay,
So I'll start at the Drupal.org issue first. So this is issue 332796. Add permissions to the update module to hide warnings. And so the solution here is to add a new permission, see update notifications, permission to update manager, and then only show those update notifications to users that have that permission. And add an upgrade path to grant this permission to all roles that currently see the notifications because they have the
administer site configuration permission. So if we travel all the way down to the end of the ticket, it's very close. I think it's really a matter of like wordsmithing at this point. DWW said, my rewarding lost the word always about the status report. In rereading this, I think we should keep that as is. And well, it kind of bounces around a lot. So I came into the GitLab side of things to see where discussions were at and just tried to find any of the remaining open questions. And so there was this one. And yeah, so this is just kind of a question about what should the permission be called, and then what should the permission description below it state. And so wonder if I could, I think I do have a version of the site locally that I could spin up and demonstrate this.
And Andre posted in the chat a link to a particular comment that might be what you're looking for.
Oh, great. Okay. Looks like it linked.
No, sorry, it didn't open the right comment. It's because I think it shifted because of the commits. Yeah, because all of the commits. It's number 77, I think. Yeah, number 77. I think that's the commentary you were looking for, because that's the comment where Derek DWW asks for help for the phrasing of the sentence. Is it right? That's the comment.
Yeah. Well, I think it's all kind of wrapped. Well, yeah. So, I mean, this is. Yeah, there's kind of, well, yeah, yeah, the permission is one, and then, well, this is fixed. This is also fixed. So I think it is just the permission. Yeah.
So the only question at this point is what to name the permission?
Mm-hmm. And I suggested view updates because if you look at it alongside all of the other permissions that Drupal comes with, it usually uses that verb. So I'm spinning up a local site right now just so we can see that alongside the other permissions that Drupal provides.
I have a local site running with 9.4. Ah, you got it.
Yeah. And let's see if this. I think right now it's called access updates. Huh.
What module provides the permission?
Update manager.
And have you applied the patch in that local site you're running?
Yeah, I have.
So scroll down a little bit further and you should see the.
Oh, thanks. Yep. Yeah, so this is what it says currently. See update notifications. And if we, I don't think there are any other permissions that you see. Let's see. Yeah, but there are several that use view user email address, view user information, view site reports. So that was my suggestion, but curious what other people think. And I think it would be helpful if we can reach a consensus on the wording. I think that'll help them get unstuck and settle on some final language.
Yeah, seeing it in context here is very helpful. Can you increase the font size a little bit? Yeah, I agree with view rather than see.
Is there, am I remembering correctly that there's also a administer software updates permission?
That might be in a separate ticket, but not in this proposed solution, no.
No, is that not one that's, you think it'd be under, if it was Paracore, you think it'd be under update, the update heading, but maybe I'm misremembering that, but I thought there was like some permission for administering software updates. Sounds really familiar.
Oh
in the
yeah.
core already.
Oh yeah. While there is already a permission to administer software updates, it's not used for that.
Yeah, because this one would. So my only thinking is like because I remember we went around back and forth about this permission in the past, and I wonder if where is that? Oh, it's that one's under system.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a follow-up as to why that's under system and not under update manager, but there we go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just thinking, particularly if we don't present those two permissions together, you could have a situation where someone can view the page where they can administer the software updates, but they don't actually get the notifications because maybe they don't have the full administrator role, which is, I mean, this is probably quite an edge case, but I feel like that is a separate issue to look at what we can do to address that. I wonder if you grant that view update notification permission, the new one that's being introduced here, is there any way you could, like, I'm just trying to think, would those notifications that you would then see, do they link you to a page that you potentially don't have access to if you're not also given the administer software updates?
Yeah, that's a good point. I can test that separately and see what happens. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure
Yeah.
that's a problem. We did discuss this a while ago, and we suggested there might be cases where people regularly using the site don't have permission to do updates, but they can contact someone who does have permission, and that person might not be interacting with the site on a daily basis.
Right.
So there are use cases for showing the notification without giving permission to implement them.
Yeah. So I guess for me, my concern is less about the specific words of whether we use view or see, and more about making sure that the people granting permissions are aware that there are these two permissions that are in some way linked together. And maybe that is in part, maybe that's just, we solve that just by presenting them together on the permissions list. But again, that's probably like more of a follow-up issue in itself.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I guess that's a suggestion to move the permission from the system module to the update module.
Yeah, I guess there may be a reason it's under the system module. Like it depends if the page it relates to is provided by the update module or the system module, but yeah.
So we are getting close to the end of the hour. I support view rather than see. I kind of think that maybe the description should be shortened because basically no one likes descriptions.
Totally. Yeah, and my suggestion for that was, well, it's still pretty long. View update notification messages that are displayed on most administrative pages when updates become available. Yeah, I would be in favor of shortening that even further.
Yeah, I mean, we could always bring this one back up to do some, when we have more time to do wordsmithing or something.
But I think we're going to have to wrap the meeting. DrupalCon is coming next week. I hope some of you can make it there. I know Christina has proposed a BOF for the admin menu and possibly also the dashboard idea. I saw a note from her on Twitter. She's asking when is the BOF schedule going to be published? And it hasn't happened yet. Anyway, Friday, a week from today, I will be back home. I will be jet lagged, having taken an overnight flight, but the meeting will take place. So I hope a lot of you can make it then.
All right. See you soon then.
See you.
Great.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I actually will be not here next week because I'm traveling next Friday over to the Netherlands, so I will miss next week's meeting. But hopefully it goes well.
Okay, thank you. So you won't be around to cover my jet laggedness.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, see you in 2 weeks, probably.
Yeah. See you then. Thanks,
Okay.
Benji.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.